Two heads, one tail, young yin. Two tails, one head, young yang. Three tails, old yin. Primary trigram will be con water. Two heads, one tail, young yin. 3 tails, old yin. Two tails, one head, yin yang. I brought this fish rock to show you. Looks like a goldfish, like a goldfish cracker. Tell me that's not a goldfish. And then this side. Yeah, I don't know. This is a river rock. Pilchuck River. It's named that due to red and water, and I guess it's got a high iron content in it. This rock is slightly red, but it also draws my attention to this little booklet that I use with 2 fish on it. So, our primary hexagram, the bottom trigram, will be read as broken, solid, broken. This is Con water. Yes. Con is deep water, flowing and formless. He is the complement of Li, dark where Li is bright, unconscious to her sharp lucidity, and represents a more fluid, intuitive, and emotional way of perceiving. This is danger, exposure, and solitude, and the need to respond with courageous self-reliance when confronted by the haunting unknown. Water is the middle sun, situated in the north, associated with midwinter and midnight. The top or outer trigram of our primary hexagram will be read as broken, broken, solid. This is Gen Mountain. The mountain is still. It is a limit where you must stop. Gen brings each cycle to an end, defining a space where we can recognize, assimilate, and complete our experience. He creates a personal still center amid change where we can retreat for perspective and a firm foundation for new growth. He is well-grounded, confident, and of independent spirit. He is still and knows. Mountain is the youngest son, child of maturity. In the cycle of directions and seasons, he is the northeast, late winter, approaching spring, the pivot between cycles. Gen Mountain above Con water give us the primary hexagram of 4. Our supporting hexagram, changing line 3 and 5 transform from their old yin versions to their yang yang transformations. This will give a bottom trigram or inner trigram of broken, solid, solid. This is Xun Thunder. Xun, wind or wood, sorry. Xun is both wind and living plants. Whatever penetrates, spreads, and grows, shaping itself to the space available or shaping that space to its own nature. She is responsive flexibility, sensitively improvising and adapting. Like the wind, she can always find a way through because she never creates any resistance, and so her influence is subtle and gradual, but far-reaching. In the family of Trigrams, Xun is the eldest daughter, gentle and submissive. She belongs to the southeast and to late spring and early summer. Our top or outer trigram of our supporting hexagram will be read as broken, solid, solid. So once again, Xun, wind or wood. Xun, wind or wood above Xun, wind or wood give us the supporting hexagram 57. I will get the titles to our hexagrams from Lu I-ming's Taoist I Ching, which he wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept. Hexagram 4, our primary hexagram, Lu I-ming calls darkness. Starting yin convergence, making unruly yin submit, integrating with the world yet preventing mundanity from taking over. Negatively, it represents obscurity, unknowing. Positively, it represents innocence. Also represents stopping in danger. Just want to point out, hexagram 4 is after hexagram 1, heaven, which is all solid lines, and hexagram 2, earth, which is all broken lines. Basically unify and create the beginning of difficulty in hexagram 3. Basically sprouting up from the earth with primal energy. Difficult process of breaking out of acquired temporal conditioning and bringing the primordial to the fore, the process known as advancing the yang fire. And then we have darkness. Yeah, hexagram 4. And hexagram 57, our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. 57, wind. Progress by flexible obedience. Darkness and wind. I've described it before, the sense of kind of essence being like a dark breeze or a dark wind from behind you, like going down into a cave in the earth and feeling that dark breeze behind your head. We will read from I Ching, Walking Your Path, Creating Your Future by Hilary Barrett. It's a nice introductory I Ching commentary, yet still quite profound and lucid. Hexagram 4, Hilary Barrett calls not knowing. Pardon me, I was going to read these cards too. When we approach the I Ching to consult the oracle, the question we bring to it will always have the general context of how can I act in creative relation with the spirits or forces shaping this moment of time. In Kibi's I Ching Tarot 4, darkness, she calls youthful folly. quite interesting looking card. And what her little booklet says about it, with the fish on it. Youthful folly, knowledge, ignorance, self-education, learning. The attitude of someone with little knowledge, such as a child, willing to learn of their own volition in the dim light. Active attitude to learn. Yeah. Or somebody interrupting the, I don't know, the theater performance with like yelling while someone's also trying to read. I don't know. And our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. 57, Kiwi calls the gentle/wind. Interesting. The gentle/wind, humble, flexible, matchless, adapt to others. Even if you don't insist, if you follow and learn the right things, things will go well. In order to obey indiscriminately, you may lose everything. What the hell's going on there? All right. So, from Hilary Barrett's I Ching, Walking Your Path, Creating Your Future, Hexagram 4, Darkness, she calls not knowing. Key questions. What don't you know? What if you didn't need to know all the answers now? How can you learn from experience? Oracle, not knowing, creating success. I do not seek the young ignoramus. The young ignoramus seeks me. The first consultation speaks clearly. The second and third pollute the waters. Polluted and hence not speaking, constancy bears fruit. Not knowing literally means being covered over, like a young animal hidden away in the undergrowth by its mother. So you are ignorant and cannot see as far as you would like to. But this is not such a terrible thing while you are still so small. To be small and ignorant is a creative, harmonious way to engage with your world, and holding steadily to not knowing, and hence to learning, will bring good results. But this flow from creating success to constancy bears fruit is interrupted when the young ignoramus goes running after answers as if it were embarrassing not to know. In his anxious persistence, he shows a profound disrespect for his teacher and also for the answer he is seeking that he imagines can be had so quickly. So the I who speaks here gives one clear answer and then may refuse to answer. Or perhaps there is just such confusion that no answer can be understood. That speaker can be another person you're asking for a response you need. It can also be the oracle itself or what speaks through it. Here's this little image of a mama and baby panda. Makes me think of Kung Fu Panda. Image, below the mountain, spring water comes forth, not knowing. A noble one nourishes character with the fruits of action. The pure spring rises under the shelter of the mountain. It doesn't know where it's going, yet its flow becomes steadily deeper and stronger. In the same way, a noble one nurtures personal character and strength with the fruits of going forward and taking action. Learning comes from experience, not in the form of ready-made answers. Sequence. Not knowing follows from hexagram 3, sprouting. Things that are newly born must needs be ignorant, and so not knowing follows. Not knowing means ignorance and the youth of things. You are at an early stage of development, like an infant just beginning to toddle out into the wider world. Suddenly, you find yourself ignorant. The world is a much less orderly place than it appeared from the cradle. So if you have a confused sense of losing your center, this is a sign that you're seeing the real world more clearly than before. And our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all, Hilary Barrett calls subtly penetrating. Key questions: how can you get to know this from the inside? What is taking shape? Oracle: subtly penetrating, creating small success, fruitful to have a direction to go, fruitful to see the great person. Subtly penetrating means becoming part of something or someone. It describes all-pervading influences like the wind shaping the landscape. You penetrate subtly by feeling your way into things, yielding gently to their nature. You shift your own ideas and expectations and come to understand the situation from inside, on its own terms. And so, as you allow things to shape you, you also reach a place where you can shape them. The old Chinese character for subtly penetrating shows a stand bearing the official seals a ruler would bestow on those he trusted. Someone who bows down and accepts a seal is submitting to the order of things, entering in and receiving his place within it. Then his seal, sign of personal authenticity, endows him with influence and the power to make his mark. Whatever penetrates subtly becomes influential, not by acting on situations or people to change their nature, but by becoming part of their nature and acting in them. Because it never acts as an antagonist, it never creates resistance and permeates everywhere. Such influence does not bring sudden transformations. It works imperceptibly, in tiny increments, only creating small success. It is useful to align all these small shifts with a single intention that lends direction to the changes. And whether you see them in the flesh or with your inner eye, it's good to have a clear vision of the great person, a model of the larger possibilities implied by small success. Image: wind follows wind, subtly penetrating. A noble one conveys mandates and carries out the work. Wind begets winds. Winds beget winds. Movement creates movement, and the influence penetrates everywhere. This is a time to use your inner seal of office to translate what moves you inwardly into your influence in the world. When a noble one receives a mandate, she conveys it onward by sending out orders, and so her indirect influence reaches further than direct action ever could. Sequence: subtly penetrating follows from hexagram 56, traveling. The traveler has no place where he is accepted, and so subtly penetrating follows. Subtly penetrating means entering in. The traveler followed his own path and minimized his interaction with his surroundings, not expecting to change them or be changed by them. But presently, the traveler must come home. There is a time for acceptance and the interpenetration of inner and outer worlds. Pair: subtly penetrating forms a pair with hexagram 58, opening, opening, seeing, subtly penetrating, hidden away. Some things are in plain view, some are hidden away. Among people, there is explicit communication, and there is the subtle interpenetration of lives in countless small ways. And our changing lines 3 and 5 put a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. They take precedence over all other elements and are the most focused part of the reading. Changing line 3 has the general context: an emerging identity, facing a transition, with fear or desire, resolution or indecision. And changing line 5, strength and self-determination, clear vision, being in command. So changing line 3 and 5 of hexagram 4, not knowing. Changing line 3, don't take this woman. She sees a man of bronze and there is no self. No direction bears fruit. Yes. Don't take this woman, don't join yourself to a person who behaves like this, and don't adopt this mentality as your own. She sees her prospective partner as if he were made of bronze, not flesh and blood, casting him in the mold of her ideas and what she already supposedly knows. Needing everything to fit this gleaming image and follow predetermined patterns, she cannot relate to him as a real human being and loses her own sense of self. Such inauthenticity means there is no direction you could usefully pursue or explore. And changing line 5, young ignoramus, good fortune. The oracle identifies the young ignoramus as the one who seeks answers. He enjoys good fortune because of his youthful, energetic constancy and because there is nothing to impede the flow of his learning. He owns no stockpile of ready-made answers and has no preconceptions between him and the truth. Next, we will look at this through the lens of I-ming, through his Taoist I Ching, which he wrote in 1796 as a Taoist adept. It is quite alchemical. Hot off the grill for you. No idea what that is. Darkness. In darkness is development. It is not that I seek naive innocence. Naive innocence seeks me. The first augury informs, the second and third defile. Defilement does not inform. It is beneficial to be correct. Explanation. Darkness means obscurity and unknowing. In the body of the hexagram, mountain is above and 2 yin advancing under 1 yang. With 2 yin advancing under 1 yang, water. Water is below, with 1 yang fallen between 2 yins. Both have forms of yin injuring yang. Therefore it is called darkness. As for the qualities of the hexagram, danger is within stillness. There is danger, yet ability to stop. This includes the meaning of stopping darkness. This hexagram represents starting the operation of yin convergence. The hexagram follows on the previous hexagram, earth. Earth means going on the path of submission and receptivity. Carrying out yin convergence means returning recalcitrant yin to submission. After the primordial yang in people culminates, conditioned yin arises. The original spirit is obscured and discriminatory awareness does things. One drops the real and recognizes the false, using intellect mistakenly, producing all sorts of cleverness. Though overtly there is light, inside is really dark. This is where darkness comes from. Once you have entered darkness, essence is disturbed and life is destabilized. In a single day, you are born 1,000 times and die 10,000 times, not knowing how to stop. This is most perilous. If you know there is danger and are able to stop it, silencing the intellect, being as though ignorant and dumb, though you be without knowledge outwardly, inwardly you really have knowledge. From false darkness you return to true darkness. Thus it is that in darkness there is paradoxically a way of development. The best development of darkness is innocence. The darkness of innocence unconsciously follows the laws of God, tranquil and unstirring, yet sensitive and effective. All actions flow from the fundamental essence. This is the dignified status of a sage, the aspect of the celestial human. Those who travel the path of darkness must go back to the darkness of innocence. Only then is it the darkness that is returning to the origin. However, this darkness of return to the origin is not a matter of seeking naive innocence oneself. It is naive innocence that seeks oneself. Not seeking innocence oneself means that it does not come about by formal effort and is not attached to forms. Innocence seeking oneself means that it comes naturally and does not fall into voidness. Not clinging to forms, not falling into voidness, not material, not empty. Since it is not a matter of seeking the real, one does not exclude the artificial either. Ever calm, yet always responsive yet ever calm. It is not darkness, yet resembles darkness. It is darkness, but actually not darkness. External things cannot enter. Inside, thoughts cannot arise. One does not seek reality, but reality is here. But this path that is neither form nor void has two methods, nurturing darkness and opening darkness, which should be known. When yin and yang are mixed and natural reality has not yet been injured and external influences have not yet entered, darkness belongs to reality. It is like a first augury when the yarrow sticks are not yet divided, surely giving a direction at first. One should be open, calm, sincere, and serious, thereby going on the path of non-contrivance. Once yin and yang have divided, there is a lack of natural reality. External influences creep in, and darkness winds up in falsehood. It is like when the yarrow sticks are messed up after 2 or 3 auguries. Without awaiting their directions, one may change arrangements, thus going on the path of striving. The path of non-contrivance nurtures the darkness of reality. The path of striving transforms the darkness of falsehood. Nurturing reality, transforming falsehood, striving and non-striving are to be used according to the time and situation as appropriate. One may proceed from striving and wind up non-striving, or one may succeed in striving by way of non-striving. In either case, the ultimate accomplishment is to use the highest good without evil, wholly integrated with natural principle, to go back to the origin, return to the fundamental, and revert to innocence. Those who travel the path of darkness must do so in the correct way. And our supporting hexagram 57, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all, wind. Wind is small but developmental. It is beneficial to have somewhere to go. It is beneficial to see a great person. Explanation. Wind is penetration and laying low, meaning gradually making progress by flexible obedience. In the body of the hexagram, 1 yin lies below 2 yangs, traveling the path of firmness by means of the path of flexibility. Not hurrying, yet not lagging, gradually progressing step by step, obedient within obedient within and obedient without, obedient below and obedient above, going from near to far, rising from low to high, like the wind going further and higher as it blows, reaching everywhere. Therefore, this is called wind. This hexagram represents progressing on the path of flexible obedience. It follows on the previous hexagram, richness. In richness, understanding and action are united so that one can deal with things adaptively, passive or active at will, essence in life depending on oneself and not on fate. However, the path of uniting understanding and action is not easily accomplished. It cannot be done without the work of gradual progress by flexible obedience. If one is flexible and obedient, one can endure long. By gradual progress, one can penetrate. Flexible obedience, making gradual progress, getting stronger with persistence, working without slacking off, will eventually arrive at deep attainment of self-realization. Therefore, wind is small but developmental. But though the ability to obey is a way of development, there are those who know about obedience but cannot practice it. And there are those who can follow the low but not the high. There are those who can follow but not when it is unpleasant. And there are those who can obey in the beginning but not in the end. I think it's meant to be, there are those who can follow the high but not the low. There are those who can obey when it is pleasant but not when it is unpleasant. There are those who can obey in the beginning but not in the end. All of these are unable to really carry out the path of obedient progress. So even though they try to follow it, they do not get through. When we look for obedience in which knowledge and action are both effective, firmness and flexibility are employed together, able to be above and below, competent in both ease and adversity, effective both inwardly and outwardly, unified from start to finish, we find that only great people with balance and right orientation are capable of this. Therefore, it is beneficial to have somewhere to go, and it is beneficial to see a great person. A great person considers essence in life important, considers the Tao and its qualities valuable, looks upon the ephemeral body as like a dead tree, looks upon wealth and status as like floating clouds, is inwardly always more than fulfilled while outwardly appearing insufficient, truly applies real practical steps making gradual progress, mind firm and will far-reaching, determined not to rest until the great path is completed. Therefore there is benefit. Those who are not great people cling to partiality. They obey and follow without balance to correct orientation. They obey and follow without balance or correct orientation. How can they get anywhere, to any benefit? So the benefit of going somewhere is only for the great person. And we will also look at our changing lines 3 and 5, which put a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. They take precedence over all other elements and are the most focused part of the reading. Changing line 3 has the general context, an emerging identity, facing a transition with fear or desire, resolution or indecision. And changing line 5, strength and self-determination, clear vision, being in command. Hexagram 4, changing line 3. 3 yen. Don't take this woman in marriage. If she sees a moneyed man, she'll lose herself. Nowhere beneficial. Explanation. When the softness of yen is not balanced or correctly oriented, you indulge in feelings and desires. So don't take this woman in marriage. What is cautioned against is doing things on the basis of the human mentality. Greedy for material goods and sensual pleasures, like a loose woman who loses herself when she sees a moneyed man. Without having won others, you have already lost yourself. There is no benefit. You should know this is darkness increasing darkness. And changing line 5, the line of the ruler. Innocence is auspicious. Explanation. In stopping, knowing when and where to stop, being incapable, so following the capable, using firmness to balance flexibility, borrowing strength to compensate for weakness. Though dark, this is not darkness. This is the auspicious path of innocence unconsciously following the laws of God. This is darkness aware of its darkness. And just gonna take a look at the commentary section. Don't have a ton of time. Let's see if there's, yeah, this is really short. Darkness, mountain above, water below. Under a mountain, a spring is produced in darkness. A superior person nurtures character with fruitful action. Darkness means developmental nurturance without intellectualism. Above is mountain, below is water. Here, water is referred to as a spring and not water, because the spring under the mountain is water. When a spring is produced under a mountain, the spring is nurtured by the mountain, being water with a basis, flowing far from a deep source, going through without hindrance. This is the image of darkness. What superior people see in this is that when those who practice the Tao want to exercise virtue outwardly, first they must develop character inwardly. If one acts without development, the action will have no basis. Without inner mastery, action will injure character. This is the reason for emulating a spring emerging from a mountain, acting fruitfully without obstruction, taking as a model the mountain nurturing the spring, nurturing character with caring warmth. The yang in the center of water refers to what is produced by celestial unity, the original generative energy that gives birth to beings. This is what is called the celestial virtue or power. This virtue is hidden in the temporal. Since ordinary people follow temporally acquired conditioning and abandon the primordial, most do not know how to develop, nurture, cultivate, and sustain this primal virtue. So as a result, they gradually dissipate it and harm their own essence in life. Those who awaken to this set aside acquired conditioning to practice inner development and outward action, using development to perfect action, using action to test development, cultivating both inside and outside. Nurturing character is developmental, and acting on it is developmental as well. Nurturing character means no worthy quality is left undeveloped. Fruitful action demands that every act be fruitful. Nurturance of character demands that it be nurtured until it is stable as a mountain. Only then is development complete. Fruitful action demands that it be effective as a spring flowing day and night. Only then is fruition complete. Action fruitful, character developed, one completes one's nature and understands the meaning of life, integrated with the celestial design, unconsciously following the laws of God. This is why darkness is valued. And our supporting hexagram 57, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. Wind. Wind above, wind below. Wind following wind. Thus do superior people articulate directions and carry out tasks. Wind symbolizes gradually entering. Above and below is wind. One wind arises first, another wind follows after. Wind following wind is the image of harmonious progress. What superior people see in this is that since practitioners of the Tao live with people, they cannot but have tasks. And since they have tasks, they must carry them out. Generally speaking, to carry out tasks calls for serenity without rush. If one carries out tasks hurriedly and without first articulating directions for those who share in the tasks to clarify why they are thus and so, then people will not follow along, and the tasks will not be fulfilled. Therefore, superior people first articulate directions and then carry out tasks. Articulation means clarification. Directions are instructions. Tasks are whatever people should do, things like cultivating character, accomplishing works, accumulating achievements and deeds, taking burdens upon oneself for the benefit of others. Directions are not only the orders of the rulers to the ruled, the instructions given by the honorable and experienced people who exercise leadership in affairs to less developed people are all called directions. If directions are articulated before tasks are carried out, then the people will know those tasks are to be done. One person takes the lead and many people follow behind, so that all tasks are successfully carried out. This is like wind following wind, the two winds continuous, going together without mutual interference. This is the way superior people do good with others. And James Dekorne's Gnostic Book of Changes we will next look at. Sounded like Yoda. And he is a practitioner of the Tao himself and has synthesized several I Ching commentaries in this one helpful place. I've left links to it in the description box below. It's a PDF you could download. He didn't have it published, but I find it to be one of the most lucid of all sources that you could access yourself even at any time with the help of the trusty internet. 4, James Dekorne calls inexperience. Other titles: youthful folly, the symbol of covering, immaturity, uncultivated growth, youth, acquiring experience, youthful ignorance, enveloping, folly, darkness. A quote from D.F. Hook: often the I Ching uses this hexagram to show us that we should not be asking this question. Judgment, leg. Inexperience means progress and success. I do not seek the inexperienced youth, but he seeks me. When he shows the sincerity proper for divination, I instruct him. If he asks 2 or 3 times, that is troublesome, and I do not instruct the troublesome. Firm correctness brings advantage. Blowfold, immaturity, good fortune. I am not one to seek out uncultivated youths, but if such a youth seeks me out, I shall at first read and explain the omens. Yet should he ask me many times, just because of his importunity, I shall not explain anything more. The omen indicates a need for proper direction. This hexagram suggests stubbornness, the upper trigram, issuing from the softness of the womb, the lower trigram. While it sometimes happens that youthful rashness succeeds where sober counsels fail, it is nevertheless the duty of the mature man to cultivate the minds of the young and to respond, within reason, to their requests for guidance. As an omen, this hexagram may be taken to imply a case in which a certain amount of rashness may lead to success, but in which older people are not absolved from the duty of guiding the young. There is also a suggestion that the Book of Change itself, though fully responsive to those who make the right approach, will not brook importunity in the form of trivial questions or of seeking to reverse its judgments by further questioning. Whether the omen may be taken to mean that we should go ahead with some rash scheme, or that it is time for us to restrain someone's youthful rashness, will depend upon the nature of the inquiry, the people concerned in it, and the particular moving lines involved in the response. Ritzma/Karcher, enveloping, growing, in no way me seeking youthful enveloping seeking me. The initial oracle consulting, notifying, twice, 3 times obscuring by consequence not notifying. Yeah, babe?
I need that basket of clothes.
Okay, you can come get it if you want. Okay, come get it. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of concealment and clouded awareness. It emphasizes that actively accepting this concealment in order to nurture growth is the adequate way to handle it. You can come get it, that's fine. The image, leg, a spring issuing from the mountain, the image of inexperience. The superior man, in accordance with this, nourishes his virtue and strives for resoluteness of conduct. Blowfold. This hexagram symbolizes a watery hole at the foot of a mountain amidst uncultivated growth. The superior man, by determined good conduct, nourishes his virtue. The second sentence is deduced from the first. Both are suggested by the component trigrams. Ritzma/Karcher, below mountain, issuing forth spring water, enveloping. A Chunsu uses fruiting movement to nurture actualizing Tao. To actualize Tao is the ability to follow the course traced by the ongoing process of the cosmos, linked with acquire, D, acquiring that which makes a being become what it is meant to be. Wu, a spring flows at the foot of a mountain. This is ignorance. The Chunsi resolves to taking steps to cultivate his virtue. Commentary. Confucius/Leg. Inexperience shows the trigram of the mountain above that of the abyss. The perilous impasse suggested by these figures evokes the idea of inexperience. Progress and success are suggested because the action and development of the hexagram conform to the requirements of the time. When inexperience seeks wisdom, will responds to will. The oracle responds to sincerity because it has the qualities of the dynamic line in the central second place. But the oracle does not respond to ignorant importuning. The proper duty of a sage is to nourish the correct nature of the ignorant. Leg. Difficulty shows us plants struggling within the earth, and inexperience suggests the small and undeveloped sprouts which then appear upon its surface. This is an image of youthful ignorance, and the object of the hexagram is to show how those in authority should deal with it. The judgment takes the form of the oracle's response to the questioner. The upper trigram represents a frowning mountain which blocks the progress of the traveler. The lower trigram symbolizes a stream of water in a dangerous canyon, such as might be found at the foot of a mountain. The combination of these symbols suggests the perilous nature of ignorant inexperience. The subject of line 2 represents the oracle who demands sincerity from the unenlightened. It is his duty to evoke the innate correct nature hidden within the questioner, to bring this quality out and develop it. In regard to the image, Chu Si says that the water of a spring is sure to move on and gradually advance. This may serve as a symbol of the general process and progress of education. Notes and paraphrases. Judgment. Inexperience portrays the relationship between the ego and the self as one of student to master. Communication via the oracle demands seriousness of purpose. The self refuses to pander to the ego's illusions. The superior man furthers the work by developing his will and intent. Wilhelm's title for this hexagram is Youthful Folly, which tends to lend it a negative connotation that is not always strictly applicable. However, he is quick to point out that the title should be understood to mean the immaturity of youth and its consequent lack of wisdom, rather than mere stupidity. While the title of inexperience avoids the negative connotation, it must be acknowledged that there is an aura of irritation in this hexagram which illustrates an uncomfortable truth about the relationship between the ego and the self. The self is an awesome archetype, and once one has established contact with him, he assumes a distinctly stern personality. The self will not pander to the ego's illusions and has no patience with anything but the unvarnished truth. Tact and patience are not among his attributes. Lao Tzu describes him very accurately. The sage is unkind. He treats the people like sacrificial straw dogs, which is just the way it is. As a satellite of the self, the ego complex was not created just so that it could spend a lifetime indulging its fantasies. The work must be undertaken, and the self knows more than you do what remains to be done. Like any excellent teacher, he demands more of us than we think we have in us to give. This phenomenon of the tyrannical and often unjust self has been noted in many times and places. Here is an example from Neoplatonism. A quote from Imblicus in the Egyptian Mysteries. What shall we say in regard to the question, why do the divinities that are invoked require the worshipper to be just, although they themselves, when entreated, consent to perform unjust acts? In reply to this, I am uncertain in respect to what is meant by performing unjust acts, as the same definition may not appear right both to us and to the gods. We, on the one hand, looking to that which is least significant, consider the things that are present, the momentary life, what it is and how it originates. The beings superior to us, let me say, know for certain the whole life of the soul and all its former lives. And if they bring on a retribution from the supplication of those who invoke them, they do not increase it beyond what is just. On the contrary, they aim at the sins impressed upon the soul in former lifetimes, which men do not perceive, and so imagine that it is unjust that they fall into the misfortunes which they suffer. A contemporary expression of this idea comes from consciousness researcher John Lilly, famous for his work with dolphins and isolation tank experiments with psychedelic drugs. A quote from John Lilly: "Cosmic love, e.g. the spiritual self, is absolutely ruthless and highly indifferent. It teaches its lessons whether you like/dislike them or not. By definition, the gods, archetypes, are not human. Were it possible for them to evolve without human vessels in space-time, presumably we humans would not exist. It is these archetypes in the guise of our complexes and limiting beliefs that are being altered by the work. Because the unconscious psyche is a multiverse, it is sometimes very difficult to differentiate just who is advising us, and the self via the oracle will occasionally test us for our ability to use intuitive common sense, which is to say, when the gods or the self become totally unreasonable, we can only go along with them to the limit of our human understanding. Slavish obedience to all injunctions from the unconscious is to sell our souls outright to something that we don't understand. The renunciation of common sense is the renunciation of our most precious birthright. On the other hand, to disobey at will is to put our souls at risk. This is one of the most painful of all dilemmas. How far do we go in our obedience to unseen powers? Aspects of this problem have been called the dark night of the soul, an inner initiation, a trial by fire to see what we are really made of. There are times in the advanced course of the work when one receives the strange insight that the self actually wants us to disobey. This ordeal can only be lived through. No one can advise you except your own sense of what is right for you at any given moment. The most useful guideline that I have found is that the precepts of the work, as found in the perennial philosophy, are consistent worldwide and constitute a reliably moral structure for responsible choice. If the oracle seems to be telling you to do something contrary to your inner sense of right and wrong, contrary to your understanding of the precepts of the work, then go with this intuition rather than the oracle. The self via the oracle will test you in many ways to make you develop. The ultimate goal is to become so infallibly intuitive that oracles become superfluous. The gods need our intelligent disobedience if they themselves are to evolve. It is in the stress between obedience and conscientious disobedience that growth takes place. In one sense, whatever choice you make, as long as it is conscious and you fully accept the consequences, is the right choice for you at the moment. We learn through our mistakes and can never fail our lessons if we truly integrate our experience into our unfolding lives. Confucius, one of the greatest teachers who ever lived, obviously took his teaching method from the judgment of this hexagram. The master said, "I won't teach a man who is not anxious to learn, and I will not explain to one who is not trying to make things clear to himself. And if I explain 1/4 and the man doesn't go back and reflect and think out the implications in the remaining 3/4 for himself, I won't bother to teach him again." And so it is with the oracle, the self. The deeper one gets involved in the work, the more difficult the lessons become, so that one is always kept in a position of relative inexperience. There are times when a simple answer would suffice that you will receive an ambiguous image, which, if you do 3/4 of the work, will lead you to a profound insight. And our supporting hexagram, which puts our primary hexagram in a broader context and influence, a direction of travel, an underlying issue that has to do with you and your relationship to it all. 57, James Dekorne calls penetration. Other titles might be the gentle, the penetrating, wind, the symbol of bending to enter, willing submission, gentle penetration, ground, calculations, complacence, penetrating influence, the penetration of the wind, humility, devoted service, and submission, judgment. Leg, penetration indicates modest success. See the great man and move in the direction that implies. Blowfold, willing submission, success in small matters. It is advantageous to have in view a goal or destination and to visit a great man. This is a reasonably auspicious hexagram. It augurs a certain amount of success for those who submit to circumstances, unless a moving line indicating the contrary is received. This is not a time for resistance, but for submission. Ritsama/Karcher, ground the small, growing, harvesting, possessing directed going, harvesting, visualizing great people. This hexagram describes your situation in terms of providing an underlying support. It emphasizes that subtly penetrating and nourishing things from below, the action of ground, is the adequate way to handle it. To be in accord with the time, you are told to enter the situation from below. The image, leg. 2 wind trigrams following each other form penetration. The superior man proclaims his commands and undertakes his work. Blowfold. This hexagram symbolizes a favorable wind. The superior man performs his allotted tasks in consonance with heaven's, or the sovereign's will. The component trigrams combine the concepts of wind and blandness, hence a favorable wind. Ritsumo/Karcher, following winds, ground. A Chun-Tzu uses distributing fate to move affairs. Commentary. Confucius/Leg. Repeated wind trigrams show the repetition of governmental orders. The dynamic 5th line has penetrated to his correct central place and carries his will into action. The magnetic 1st and 4th lines obey the dynamic lines above them. Hence it is said that there will be success in small matters. Leg. Penetration symbolizes both wind and wood and has the attributes of docility, flexibility, and penetration. We are to think of it as wind with its penetrating power which finds its way into every nook and cranny. Confucius said, the relation between superiors and inferiors is like that between the wind and the grass. The grass must bend when the wind blows upon it. In accordance with this, the hexagram must be understood as the influence and orders of the government designed to remedy what is wrong in the people. The upper trigram denotes the orders issuing from the ruler, and the lower the obedience rendered to them by the people. Chang Tzu says, superiors in harmony with the duty of inferiors issue their commands. Inferiors in harmony with the wishes of their superiors follow them. Above and below there are that harmony and deference, and this is the significance of the redoubled wind trigram. When governmental commands in business are in accordance with what is right, they agree with the tendencies of the minds of the people who follow them. Anthony, getting this hexagram often refers to the presence of inferior elements that obstruct our having a good influence. Because this hexagram is concerned with self-correction, we often get it together with work on what has been spoiled. Hexagram 18, repair. Notes and paraphrases, judgment. Get to the heart of the matter and act on the information obtained. The superior man acts on his understanding by implementing it in the world. The hexagram of penetration, made up of 2 trigrams symbolizing wind, which is air in motion, suggests the activity of thought, the realm of air, trying to comprehend or penetrate something. Thus, each line of the figure may be seen as some aspect of an act of mental endeavor. A quote from Chang Yi. Therefore, the student must exert his own mind to the utmost. If he does so, he will know his own nature. And if he knows his own nature, examines his own self, and makes it sincere, he becomes a sage. Therefore, the great norm says, the virtue of thinking is penetration and profundity. Penetration and profundity lead to sageness. The first line depicts vacillation and indecisiveness. The second shows one trying to get to the bottom of a matter. Line 3 is an image of futile hypothesizing. 4 and 5 show 2 aspects of successful comprehension, and the 6th line symbolizes an inability to understand. A quote from Elizabeth Hayek in Initiation. Man's intellect, the greatest but most dangerous gift he has received from God, builds a bridge across the seemingly unconquerable chasm between that which is personal and mortal and that which is impersonal and eternal. Through man's intellect, he succumbed to the temptation to fall out of divine unity with his consciousness. But by the same token, his intellect gives him the possibility of bringing back his consciousness into full union with divinity. By means of his intellect, man is able to understand truth, and when he has understood, he will seek and keep on seeking and trying until he someday succeeds in finding the only path to the realization of his self. The hexagram can also symbolize humble submission and devoted service, thus suggesting the role of the ego in the work. To truly comprehend the nature of the work is to serve it with devotion. There are some interesting associations between the act of penetration and that of submission. When dynamic and magnetic are in full harmony, they lose their individual identities and become one force, which is both and neither. We will look at our changing lines 3 and 5, which put a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here are some places you may find yourself. They take precedence over all other elements and are the most focused part of the reading. Changing line 3 has the general context, an emerging identity, facing a transition, with fear or desire, resolution or indecision. And changing line 5, strength and self-determination, clear vision, being in command. Hexagram 4, inexperience, changing line 3. Leg. The third line magnetic shows that one should not marry a woman who, when she sees a man of wealth, will not keep herself from him. In no way will advantage come from her. Wilhelm/Baines, take not a maiden who, when she sees a man of bronze, loses her possession of herself. Nothing furthers. Blofeld, do not choose a wife who, on seeing a wealthy man, cannot contain herself. Nothing brings advantage. This line, besides furnishing a specific warning to those with marriage in view, means generally that this time is unpropitious from the point of view of the inquirer, whatever his question may concern. Ritsumasash-Karcher, no availing of grasping womanhood, visualizing a metallic husband. Metal Mario. Not possessing the body, without direction, harvesting. Without direction, harvesting, Wu Yu Li. No plan or direction is advantageous. In order to take advantage of the situation, do not impose a direction on events. Commentary, Confucius/Leg. A woman such as is here represented should not be taken in marriage. Her conduct is not agreeable to what is right. Wilhelm/Baines, her conduct is not in accord with order. Blofeld, do not take to wife one whose behavior is disorderly. Ritsumo/Karcher, movement not yielding indeed. Clary 2, do not introduce the girl because his conduct is not harmonious. Wu, her behavior is not beyond reproach. Leg, the third line is magnetic and occupies a dynamic place beyond the center. She separates the fourth line from the second, and the fifth line separates her from her sixth line correlate. All these things give her a bad character. Notes and paraphrases. Sue, the man guards against the loss of his individuality. He should not imitate persons of senior rank or act like a flippant girl throwing herself at a handsome man. Neither should he accept overtures from such subordinates. Wing, you are in danger of throwing yourself away in a foolish attempt to be close to that which you fervently desire. Without strength of character and individuality, you can accomplish nothing meaningful in life. Editor, in the symbolic language of the unconscious psyche, the female principle is associated with eros and the feelings. Line 3 depicts a woman unable to control herself, and by analogy, some form of inappropriate emotional expression, desire or passion. A quote from R. Restak in The Brain. The study of epilepsy demonstrates conclusively that our feelings do not necessarily depend on anything going on in the real world around us, and that the strength of our feelings is not a measure of the authenticity of our experiences or the credibility of our beliefs. We can feel strongly about something and yet be dead wrong. James Dekorne breaks changing line 3 down into 3 possible succinct definitions, A, B, and C. A, don't throw yourself away. Curb your urges, compulsions, impulses, and or emotions. B, an image of a bad deal or bad alliance. C, stop overreacting to the situation at hand. And changing line 5. Leg, the fifth line magnetic shows its subject as a simple lass without experience. There will be good fortune. Wilhelm/Baines, childlike folly brings good fortune. Blofeld, youthful innocence brings good fortune. Here, the Chinese text suggests that we are dealing not with youthful folly, but with the innocent misdemeanors of quite small children. Lu, the youth submits, good fortune. If you receive this line, you can expect to attain your goals easily. Commentary, Confucius/Leg, her good fortune is due to her docility going on to humility. Wilhelm/Baines, the good fortune of the childlike fool comes from his being devoted and gentle. Blofeld, this is because such conduct coincides with what is soft and gentle. Ritzel/Karcher, yielding uses ground indeed. Clary 2, harmonizing smoothly. Wu, this is due to his docility and humility. Leg, line 5 is in the place of honor and has for its correlate the dynamic line in the second place. Being receptive, it is taken as the symbol of a simple lass, willing to be taught by its dynamic correlate in line 2. Notes and paraphrases, Sue. The unassuming youth seeking instruction with humility gains good fortune. Wing. An attitude of innocent acceptance in regard to seeking advice from others will be rewarded. Good fortune. Editor. As so often in the I Ching, the full meaning of this line is found in the relationship between it and its correlate. The second line is the dynamic sage, and the fifth line is the magnetic receptive student. As the ruler of the hexagram, line 5 exemplifies the idea of receptivity to instruction necessary for the evolution of ignorance into gnosis. This is the relationship of the inexperienced ego to the omniscient self. A quote from T.H. Huxley, sit down before fact like a little child and be prepared to give up every preconceived notion. Follow humbly wherever and to whatever abysses nature leads, or you shall learn nothing. James Dekorne breaks changing line 5 down into two possible succinct definitions, A and B. A, awaken the mind by fixing it nowhere, Zen proverb. B, accept your ignorance and inexperience and humbly devote yourself to comprehension of the work. Now we will get a randomly card-drawn verse from the Tao Te Ching where we sum the reading up. Our primary hexagram is 4, darkness, and in it we have Con water below Gen mountain. It was speaking a lot about the mixture of strength and flexibility. You have the protective stillness of the mountain above that flowing, formless reservoir of almost like the intuition below it. Kind of drawing out from that the idea that the subconscious in this situation, or kind of the trigram that can sort of mean the subconscious, has a place. It's being protected and nurtured in order that things may develop from that. And our supporting hexagram 57 is wind, which is just Xun, wind, or wood above Xun, wind, or wood. And this has the inner penetration of inner worlds and outer worlds, and those being in communion and kind of interpenetrating. They like the wind getting into every nook and cranny. This is what it said in James Dekorne's Gnostic Book of Changes. And our changing lines, which put a pin in the map to say you are here, or at least here some places you may find yourself, take precedence over all other elements and are the most focused part of the reading. Changing line 4 is saying not to take this woman. It wouldn't be good to have her in marriage. I think, what does it say? Give me just a moment. Got it. Line 4, entangled youthful folly brings humiliation. Obstinacy and immaturity cause harm. This line might also be taken as a warning against a too idealistic or visionary attitude. Oh, geez. I mean, changing line 3. Sorry. Jeez. It says, do not choose a wife who, on seeing a wealthy man, cannot contain herself. Nothing brings advantage. This line, besides furnishing a specific warning to those with a marriage in view, means generally that this time is unpropitious from the point of view of the inquirer, whatever his question may concern. Also says, no plan or direction is advantageous. In order to take advantage of the situation, do not impose a direction on events. And it breaks changing line 3 into 3 possible succinct definitions, A, B, and C. A, don't throw yourself away. Curb your urges, compulsions, impulses, or emotions. B, an image of a bad deal or bad alliance. C, stop overreacting to the situation at hand. And changing line 5. Notes and paraphrases to the unassuming youth seeking instruction with humility gains good fortune. And in the commentary it says, this is because such conduct coincides with what is soft and gentle. Ritsumo/Carter, yielding uses ground indeed. Wu, this is due to his docility and humility. Editor, as so often in the I Ching, the full meaning of this line is found in the relationship between it and its correlate. The second line is the dynamic sage, and the fifth line is the magnetic receptive student. As the ruler of the hexagram, line 5 exemplifies the idea of receptivity to instruction necessary for the evolution of ignorance into gnosis. This is the relationship of the inexperienced ego to the omniscient self. James Dekorne breaks changing line 5 down into 2 possible succinct definitions, A and B. A, awaken the mind by fixing it nowhere, a Zen proverb. And B, accept your ignorance and inexperience and humbly devote yourself to comprehension of the work. There's some good things I'd like to bring out of Lu I-ming's Taoist I Ching, especially in the commentary section, to further draw this out. Hexagram 4, darkness. What superior people see in this is that when those who practice the Tao want to exercise virtue outwardly, first they must develop character inwardly. If one acts without development, the action will have no basis. Without inner mastery, action will injure character. This is the reason for emulating a spring emerging from a mountain, acting fruitfully without obstruction, taking as a model the mountain nurturing the spring, nurturing character with caring warmth. The yang in the center of water refers to what is produced by celestial unity, the original generative energy that gives birth to beings. This is what is called the celestial virtue or power. This virtue is hidden in the temporal. Since ordinary people follow temporally acquired conditioning and abandon the primordial, most do not know how to develop, nurture, cultivate, and sustain this primal virtue, so as a result they gradually dissipate it and harm their own essence in life. Those who awaken to this set aside acquired conditioning to practice inner development and outward action, using development to perfect action, using action to test development, cultivating both inside and outside, nurturing character is developmental, and acting on it is developmental as well. Nurturing character means no worthy quality is left undeveloped. Fruitful action demands that every act be fruitful. Nurturance of character demands that it be nurtured until it is stable as a mountain. Only then is development complete. Fruitful action demands that it be effective as a spring flowing day and night. Only then is fruition complete. Action fruitful, character developed, one completes one's nature and understands the meaning of life, integrated with the celestial design, unconsciously following the laws of God. This is why darkness is valued. And hexagram 57, supporting hexagram, wind. What superior people see in this is that sincere practitioners of the Tao live with people, they cannot but have tasks, and since they have tasks, they must carry them out. Generally speaking, to carry out tasks calls for serenity without rush. If one carries out tasks hurriedly and without first articulating directions for those who share in the tasks to clarify why they are thus and so, then people will not follow along and the tasks will not be fulfilled. Therefore, superior people first articulate directions and then carry out tasks. Articulation means clarification. Directions are instructions. Tasks are whatever people should do, things like cultivating character, accomplishing works, accumulating achievements and deeds, taking burdens upon oneself for the benefit of others. Directions are not only the orders of the rulers to the ruled, the instructions given by the honorable and experienced people who exercise leadership in affairs to less developed people are all called directions. If directions are articulated before tasks are carried out, then the people will know those tasks are to be done. One person takes the lead and many people follow behind so that all tasks are successfully carried out. This is like wind following wind, the two winds continuous, going together without mutual interference. This is the way superior people do good with others. So our primary hexagram shows this unconscious obedience to the laws of God. It's this inner darkness that things can spring up from, like the impulses that would govern a child. And in it, there's the idea that the child is unconsciously following the laws of God, and that innocence is like the fool. And then in the Fool card in the tarot. And then in our supporting hexagram 57, wind, it's kind of like a separate idea where things need to be articulated and almost planned out so that they can be carried out by others. So it's like the order of a king or something going out and then people following those instructions. So it's two completely different stances, almost like, well, drawing it out further with our changing lines 3 and 5, you have another kind of opposite situation going on. You've got the inauspiciousness of a woman that you shouldn't take in marriage because she reacts and loses herself when she sees somebody that has wealth, like a wealthy man. And so it's not going to be fruitful to have a relationship with such a person. And with James Dekorne talking about it in terms of potentially relationship that isn't, let's see here. An image of a bad deal or bad alliance might be possibly the thing. But also, don't throw yourself away. Curb your urges, compulsions, impulses, or emotions, and stop overreacting to the situation at hand. And then the changing line 5 is this. Jesus, I'm not remembering it. I know I'm going to remember as soon as I read it. Changing line 5. Childlike folly brings good fortune. Youthful innocence brings good fortune. Here the Chinese text suggests that we are dealing not with youthful folly, but with the innocent misdemeanors of quite small children. If you receive this line, you can expect it to attain your goals easily. And that's pretty much the opposite of changing line 3, which says that it's you'll have struggle in whatever you're trying to do. It says that this time is unpropitious from the point of view of the inquirer, whatever his question may concern. In general, that's what it means. So maybe it's possible that this is the idea of two different ways you could approach a situation. One being that of the innocent child, where things are just springing up from the unconscious, and it goes well. Maybe if you were to correspond the idea of planning things out and sending out orders under the idea of considering rank of people, that maybe already things are too much intellectualized, and there's too much plotting and planning to have something good come about by relationship with people of high status. And that proper response would be one of that innocent child that doesn't consider such things and is not swayed by who's got the most influence or not, that kind of thing, and unconsciously follows the will of God. It says that changing line 5, the two succinct definitions could be A, awaken the mind by fixing it nowhere, and B, accept your ignorance and inexperience and humbly devote yourself to comprehension of the work. So youthful folly will only get you so far. It's helpful to also know the work and to do it and to understand it. And so maybe this has to do with before giving instruction, like the wind, doubled wind trigrams in hexagram 57 wind, where the ruler issues out his commands and has to articulate them thus and so. Before we can do that, we can only so much rely on being able to articulate things from the unconscious that spring up without having the proper understanding of the work and accepting our ignorance and inexperience and humbly devoting ourselves to the comprehension of the work. In changing line 5. Either that, or it could be two different ways that the situation could be dealt with. One being that of somebody maybe causing us to get distracted because it's an improper alliance. Maybe they're focused on the wrong things, potentially, like status of people, rather than what they should focus on, which is just this not being concerned with such things, and awaken the mind by fixing it nowhere. This is the auspicious changing line 5. And accepting your ignorance and inexperience and humbly devoting yourself to the comprehension of the work. So yeah, I think that our concern for leading and influencing and working with people of great influence, like this woman in changing line 3 that is losing herself when she sees a man of wealth. We need to give up that kind of way of being in the world, of expecting that we know how we will ourselves be influential. More so, we should be concerned with our connection to source or the Tao or essence in life, and tending and nurturing our ability to awaken our mind by fixing it nowhere. And yet at the same time, accepting our ignorance and inexperience and humbly devoting ourselves to the comprehension of the work. So there's both this idea that even though we're ignorant, we can't know everything intellectually. We can study, but we're always going to be behind what we could possibly know. There's hopefully a certain standard that you want to attain in knowing a certain amount of things that you're working with in whatever setup you're working with it. Could be your access to the idea of whatever alchemical methods work best for you. Having a certain amount of understanding of that so that even when you are fixing your mind nowhere and having the things from the unconscious, that the Gen Mountain trigram in our primary hexagram for darkness, kind of guarding and nurturing and protecting Con water, that subconscious realm, we use our intellect to learn about what is important in our studies, our particular studies that we nurture our subconscious with. And we also hold space for allowing that to flow through us in such a way where we don't consider status and we don't consider how this might benefit us in the long run. And we're not always jumping to the next conclusion to try and figure out how we ourselves can advance by being in proper relation to some wealthy figure. It would more so be a time to use that intellect to understand the work and hold space for that subconscious well to spring up and deliver us things that are fruitful, that can be better articulated in order to send out orders so that people will understand them, and things will be developed the way they should. If things are needing to be done, then clearly they need to be articulated in such a way where people will understand and be able to carry that on themselves. If we're relying solely on that unconscious well, but just jumble fuck of stuff comes out that we can't really articulate well, it'll be effective maybe really well for us, but maybe not so much other people. There's always like a better way things can be said. And if we hold too closely to that idea of making sure everything is articulated and intellectually delivered, and don't leave enough space for the subconscious welling up of that connection with the source and the Tao, that underwater reserve or underground reserve, we need to basically balance those things out, essentially, and have them configured in the right way, or doing the right tasks. And one is always subordinate to the other, like the idea of the fool or the innocent child would probably be the higher. It says that's the auspicious thing, as opposed to the part that is looking around at people's status in the world like that's a thing, and considering that. Oftentimes the most statusy people are not anyone you would want to emulate or be like in any way. And so buddying up just because of somebody's status is probably a way to surround yourself with the wrong company, which it warns against in Changing Line 3. That maybe you've made allegiances or alliances that are not helpful. An image of a bad deal or bad alliance. And psychologically, don't throw yourself away. Curb your urges, compulsions, impulses, or emotions. So similarly, don't get swept away. Yeah, it's like that perfect balance of flexibility and strength. Flexibility nurturing strength, and strength supporting flexibility. I want to sit on this longer, but I feel like actually there was a thing. Yeah. the idea that from the level that we use our intellect on, we can only see within the maze, so to speak. We don't see from the higher perspective that is able to see how everything makes sense. And that higher perspective often is just like the idea of the subconscious, where that's largely what we act from, things coming up from there. So you can have a conscious belief or attitude that your subconscious doesn't maybe accept or run by, that's good on paper, but you're going to find that it's constantly changing your actions toward ways that you're not intending. And so maybe an idea with that would be to develop oneself so that both our outer world and inner world are meshing and combining as smoothly as possible, or that idea of the will of the self becoming the will of the ego. And so to do that, we can't be confused or obscured by statuses or anything like that, or swept away by emotions, or be overly focused on the intellect. And we can't also just be completely swept away by subconscious impulses without having some sort of context to put them in so that they're helpful to others, and so that we ourselves can make head or tails of those impulses and they make sense in a cohesive context where the subconscious, we're learning this is how my subconscious operates, and this is how I can understand it better with my intellect. And then when I sense those subconscious things coming up, I have ways of identifying those maybe archetypes or those impulses, and so that I have a way of acting on it in the world that is not swayed by any kind of position or wealth that anyone has, and is more that idea of awaken the mind by placing it nowhere. Yeah, awaken the mind by fixing it nowhere. And accept your ignorance and inexperience and humbly devote yourself to comprehension of the work. And then the other part of that is that there's this idea of both things from the past affecting the present, but also like almost like a rippling back from the future of what is causality? Retrocausality, as if something in the future influences the present, and living in the kind of tension between those two, the past and the future. And so that future-oriented self, or maybe that retrocausal aspect pulling us along, is like that idea that we don't have to know everything. We can be pulled along by that, and as long as we get good at recognizing it from emotions, or in line 3, urges, compulsions, impulses, or emotions. Like, how do you differentiate your own emotions of a situation and impulses and urges from that retrocausal sense of the development of your dharma, or your fate, maybe, or what your fate could be if you acted in the right way in each situation to a degree, like the important ones at least. That kind of tension between being pulled along by this sense of the ideal future that you could be a part of, and not having to know everything about it, being kind of like the fool in the tarot cards, and yet at the same time being able to learn what's happening on a conscious level, so that you can have the benefit of being able to bring that inward wind to interpenetrate with the outward wind of our inner world affecting our outer world, so that change can take place, and so that those can interpenetrate, and the things that are going on, the mandate that is given to us from heaven, can be something that can flow on and help and guide those who would act with heaven as well, and maybe a situation where they need maybe a little bit more guidance than we do. And so there can be benefit, because you're merging both the inner and outer worlds. So kind of like you're bringing to light that subconscious language and translating it into external language that will help you communicate with others and help you learn what's happening in there. Because it's a jumble fuck sometimes, it feels like. If you've ever dreamed, if you've ever had a dream that is a bit of a jumble fuck. Yeah. I like this guy had a vision. He said, I was watching this video. I put a bunch of his videos up recently in my on my community page. I'll put one of the best ones, I think, in a link in the description box below. But he was talking about a vision he had, and he asked about it, and he was told it means what it means, and that there was no deeper meaning. It is what it is. Like the imagery that he saw and experienced, it's its thing. You could try and boil it down into language, but the experience of the actual thing can't really be communicated any other way sometimes. Maybe that's why, the idea of parables are so effective, and why our subconscious often speaks in imagery and like archetypal forms. It's like it's this own language that you can't boil down much more simply than that. So how do we learn what we need to learn to be able to communicate effectively and know ourselves better, what's coming out, and how we can harness and work with that, rather than, and be able to differentiate it between that and urges, compulsions, and impulses or emotions, and our own desire for, ego goals, and what it truly is, maybe that retrocausal self that knows kind of like as second nature how to respond to the tide coming in or out, and can catch the wave to surf it when it is appropriate. You have to act in a certain way. You have to go out when the tide's going out, and then come in when the tide's coming in, and right at the right time to get on the swell of the wave so that you can ride it. Otherwise it could either, pass you by, or you could get bowled over by it because you're too late. But it's like that feeling of the ocean's waves moving, and how to sense that like you're part of it, and yet also be able to be in the world of thought and articulate language, and to draw out that flow in a way where you can communicate it so that others can act in accordance with that flow, that maybe aren't as sensitive to it, or maybe just don't have the words for it. That's better. Didn't feel like we were done. 50. My copy of the Tao Te Ching is by Jia Fu Feng and Jane English. Between birth and death, 3 in 10 are followers of life. 3 in 10 are followers of death. And men just passing from birth to death also number 3 in 10. Why is this so? Because they live their lives on the gross level. He who knows how to live can walk abroad without fear of rhinoceros or tiger. He will not be wounded in battle. For in him, rhinoceroses can find no place to thrust their horn, tigers no place to use their claws, and weapons no place to pierce. Why is this so? Because he has no place for death to enter.